he's losing badly what he had before.
All right, former Congressman Barney Frank, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
I'm joined now by April Ryan, White House correspondent and Washington Bureau Chief for American Urban Radio Networks, and Jeremy Byrd, Senior Advisor to the Clinton Campaign, National Field Director on President Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. And Jeremy, if there's one person in the country who's got all of the math of these states, embedded in their brain, it's you. What do you, I mean, when you look at these battleground polls out today, what is your reaction to them?
Well, it's just what you and the congressman were talking about. When you're in a general election running and there's two candidates head-to-head, you want to be in the mid-40s, flirting with 50 in battleground state polls, not in the low 30s, trying to get up to the mid-30s. But I'll say that the one state in there that I thought was just fascinating is North Carolina +9. I mean, that's unheard of territory for a Democratic candidate to be up 9 in North Carolina this stage of the election.
Jeremy, quickly a follow-up on that. Why is he overperforming Florida relative to other battleground states? I mean, I would say the battleground states he's most overperforming in are Iowa and Nevada, where it's very, very close. It's relatively close in Ohio, although she has a lead. Florida's interesting to me because it doesn't, I can't quite get around the math of the demographics such that why he's doing better there than, say, North Carolina, Virginia, and Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of noise in the polls, and you'll see them kind of go up and down at some of these states. But when you look at the totality of the states, right, and you look at the kind of consistency over the last week of the polls, and I think Florida is a state where being down 5 is astronomical in a general election. That's a state where we won by 120,000 votes in 2012. So 5 points is a pretty large margin in Florida.
That's a good point. April, I want to play this bit of sound now. Trump is. Okay. Been banging the drum about how the election's going to be stolen from him, how it's rigged, and it's pretty reckless, I think, irresponsible talk. It does some very deep and toxic delegitimizing things. Here he is talking about Pennsylvania tonight. Take a listen.
The only way we can lose, in my opinion, I really mean this, Pennsylvania, is if cheating goes on, and we have to call up law enforcement, and we have to have the sheriffs and the police chiefs and everybody watching. Because if we get cheated out of this election, if we get cheated out of a win in Pennsylvania, which is such a vital state, especially when I know what's happening here, folks. I know she can't beat what's happening here. The only way they can beat it, in my opinion, and I mean this 100%, if in certain sections of the state they cheat.
Certain sections of the state, April, what do you think he's talking about there?
In urban sections, of course. And how are we cheating when you talk about urban sections? I mean, we're, as a black community, having issues when it comes to voting rights violations in many elections. So that's going to be very interesting to see that pan out if he does indeed lose Pennsylvania. But, and I think even deeper than that, Chris, words have vibrations. His words have vibrations. I mean, early on in his campaigning, we saw him say something, and I believe it was Minnesota, the state of Minnesota. There were, and I've said this before, there were some people who beat up a homeless man and spit on them using the words Donald Trump. And then we saw what happened in Chicago, and then you saw some people on tape saying, if these protesters come back, we're going to kill them. They used the words kill. I mean, we're seeing this, and his words mean something to the people that follow him. But I'm going to say something. Both sides have a strategy. And it's interesting, as you're talking about these states that Hillary Clinton could win, and on the Democratic side, and this is not game playing, this is not cheating, this is a serious strategy that they're trying to win the Oval Office for this election cycle. They're saying they have a new Southern strategy. The Democratic Party says they're saying that they could possibly win these Southern states, Georgia, North Carolina, Louisiana, and
South
also
Carolina
Virginia.
was +2 yesterday for Donald Trump, Well,
but the issue, the reason why they think that they could win is because they're going to leave the gun issue alone right now. They say a lot of people in these states love guns, and they're going to leave the gun issue alone to possibly get over the top and win these states.
Jeremy, you were shaking your head sort of in disgust at that riff from Donald Trump, which I think is the appropriate reaction, frankly. I have to say, like, there is something just deeply, deeply poisonous about talking that way, both the racial coding of it, they're going to steal it, and what it sets up in terms of a legitimacy problem afterwards. Why were you shaking your head?
Yeah, well, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, one, there's a racial tone to what he's saying, but I think as importantly, is what he's saying is he's trying to delegitimize the election. It's very dangerous in a democracy to have that kind of language. And obviously, from everything he said this week, we know that so much of what he says is dangerous. But I think, usually when a candidate is blaming the media or claiming that the other side's going to cheat before the election starts, they have an issue. But I think it's really dangerous rhetoric to be talking about the legitimacy of our democratic process.
We should also point out the polling average in Pennsylvania is 11 points right now, all right? The guy is getting his clock cleaned by every single empirical metric. You don't need to invent some massive conspiracy for why he's losing. Thanks to April Ryan and Jeremy Bird for joining me. Appreciate it. Coming up, we have several additions to the now infamous Trump's Last 10.